So the third P that we're going to talk about in this session is place. Place actually refers to distribution channels. So supply chain and logistics. What are we talking about? This is the sequence of firms that perform activities that are required to basically create and deliver a good or a service from the moment it's created till the usage for the end consumer. So this gives us a nice illustration of how it works. We have the suppliers on one hand that actually supply the raw materials and parts. Then we have the producer. The producer actually produces the product. And then we have the consumers. The distribution channels are actually here. This is the flow between the producer and the consumer. So this is called logistic management. And this is called supply chain management between the supplier network and the marketing channel. So what do distribution channels? They determine where the products will be available. So when a consumer wants to buy a product, when they actually made the decision, I want to purchase brand A, where would they be able to get brand A? So distribution channel decision will help us understand where. Also, what locations will be appropriate. We don't necessarily have to sell our product everywhere. We can decide on specific locations. And then, how do we make sure that the product makes it safely and on time to the consumer? So all of those are questions that need to be asked when you determine what kind of distribution channels you will use. So let's first discuss some definitions. Intermediary is when I'm talking about a business firm that renders services related directly to the sale and or to the purchase of a product. It flows from the producer to the consumer. So sometimes we will also call them wholesalers or retailers. Distribution channel is consisted of the set of people and firms that are involved in transferring the title to the product as the product moves from the producer to the ultimate consumer or business user. Now, why is it so important to have a marketing channel? So let's assume that we didn't have an intermediate, we didn't have distribution, and all manufacturers would send their products directly to consumers. Do you see how many connections have to be made in order for all the manufacturers to reach all the consumers? However, if I have one distributor, all the manufacturers have to do is to be in touch with this distributor. And in order for consumers to get the product, all they need to do is be in touch with this distributor. Hence, it's much more efficient to use a distribution channel than to ignore it and try to sell directly from the producer. So what is retailing then? Retailing involves the sale of products and services to the end consumer for personal, non-business usage. So a retailer basically serves as the link between the producer and the consumer, and they perform essential services for both parties. The way to know if an entity is a retailer is to ask, well, who buys the product from that entity? If it's the end consumer, then this is a retailer. Now, retailers must consider, or in order to choose a retailer, the company must consider three aspects. One is, where does this retailer located? Because we want to make sure that it fits with our target market. We want to make sure that there's parking, there's a way to actually reach that distributor, that retailer. And we want to make sure that it doesn't cost either money or time in order for the consumer to reach that retailer and get our product. The other aspect we want to consider is the design. How does the retail stores look? It has to fit with our image. It has to fit with our branding. So for example, if I sell something at Costco, the design is not that necessarily pretty. because the idea is that you get products cheaper, and it does look a little bit like a warehouse. However, if I charge high prices like for my products like Whole Foods, then the supermarket needs to look as if it sells high-end products. It needs to look organized and colorful and appealing. And then the last aspect is the layout. You want to know how are my products going to be displayed in the store. So you want to have good relationship with the retailer as well as be able to pay the price that it will charge for your location. So you want to know where will it be displayed. Would there be special displayed? What the location will be on the shelf? Would it be easy to actually reach for that product? Once we make this decision, the next decision is, well, how many channel levels are we going to have? So first, let's look at the customer marketing channel. So this is the end consumer. There's actually 3 options to have a channel level, and a company can use all 3 or decide to use a combination or just one. So the first one is when a producer directly sends their product to a consumer. That can be a designer store. Nike, for example, have what we call a flagship store in New York City. Consumers can actually go directly to Nike to purchase their product. Coke, on the other hand, does not have that option. I cannot go to a Coke store in order to buy Coke. Then Nike, on the other hand, also use retailers in order to sell their products. For example, Nike will sell their products to Macy's, and a consumer can go to Macy's in order to buy Nike, obviously among other competitors. And then you can also have a producer that uses a wholesaler then uses a retailer, and then you get the end consumer. This will be when the markets are more complicated, either because they are small volume markets or there might be international markets. Now, very similar format can also be in B2B, in business marketing channels. The only thing that changes is obviously the end consumer is an organization and not the customer. And instead of calling it a retailer, you call it a business distributor. And instead of calling it a wholesaler, it's the manufacturer representative of that sales branch. But the format and the structure is the same. Now, sometimes we have, as we discussed before, a producer that will have a multi-channel distribution. So the Nike example is someone that can have a multi-channel distributor. So in that sense, maybe we can say B2B can also be athletic teams. So here, we just want to show you how one producer can actually have all 4, even though usually a company will have only 1 or 2 of those combinations. So what kind of decisions, strategies a company needs to make? So there are a few decisions that a company needs to make in order to pinpoint what kind of channel they want to use. So let's see what they are. The first one is, what is the role of distribution? Meaning, do I use the distribution only as a tool to move my product forward to the consumer? Or does the distribution actually play a marketing strategy role? A little bit like pricing. Both pricing and distribution can be just as a function to bring the product out, but they can also serve as an important marketing tool. So what will it be based on? It will be based on the marketing objectives of the firm. Do they use a brand? What kind of image they want to send? What kind of differentiation? It will also depend on who is the target market, what kind of segments they want to reach, how unique, how available they want to be, and then what kind of positioning the brand have. Once they know that, they can understand what role the distribution will play in the marketing mix. The second decision, before that, the consideration they want to take into account are the type of market, the geographic concentration. Sometimes target markets are very easy to reach, and hence putting it in 1 or 2 retail stores will be suffice. Sometimes they're all over the place, and then you want to make sure that you can actually reach your target market. It also depends how much volume you think your target market will buy at one time. From a product consideration, you want to make sure that it's perishable or not. Do you have to have special ways in actually storing the product? You want to know, are there any technical issues that need to be addressed or might be damaged depending on who is the channel that you choose. Maybe they'll need to be experts to show how to use the product or how to sell the product. Then we also want to consider what we call the intermediaries. Who are they going to be? What services will they offer? Are they available? And what kind of attitude they have? If you recall, we said that a service is only as good as their employees. So if I have a high-end product, one that charges a high price, I need to make sure that the retailer service also match with a high-end service. That means that the retailer, like Saks Fifth Avenue maybe, like Bloomingdale's, has to match the type of product that I want to sell. We also want to think about what we call control of the channel control. Channel control is important in the sense of, can you decide for the retailer where they're going to place your products? How strongly are they going to push the products? So big brands like Coke, for example, like Nike, they usually have channel control. A retailer does not want Coke and Nike to get out of their stores. They understand it's a source of attraction from consumers. However, small brands have no channel control and hence sometimes might want to choose retailers that are not so big because of the fact that they can provide more value for these distribution channels. Then we want to identify, well, what can be an alternative. So there's three types of distribution. One is intensive, one is exclusive, and one is selective. Now, if you recall, we talked about the different types of products, convenience, shopping, and special. So they sort of match with this type of distribution. So a convenience product most likely will require intensive distribution. That means you can get it everywhere, anywhere. So that will be a low involvement product. And the reason is that there's almost no brand loyalty in intensive distribution. Meaning that if my brand is not at the right time in the right place, the consumer very easily will switch to competition. However, if my product is a shopping product, then I can use exclusive distribution. This is a distribution where I know that there could be high involvement and hence brand loyalty. I know that the consumer will put some effort in actually searching for my product. It also fits very well with luxury and prestige image. Finally, I have selective distribution. Selective distribution is about specialty product. This is when people are highly involved. Rolex, for example, have only one store in New York City that sells the watch. Why? Because they know that people who are interested will find the time and the effort to go and visit that store. So, what is intensive distribution? This is when a producer sells the product through every outlet in the market, and the consumer might find the product. So you really want to make sure that you cover all the retailers that are available. Also, usually when we do intensive distribution, most of the advertising and promotion burden is on us, on the producer. So Coke, for example, which use intensive distribution, is the one that markets the brand. They're the one who are doing the promotion, and they are the one that are doing the commercials. By doing so, they know that it will attract people inside the different supermarkets, CVS, drugstores, and so forth. In selective distribution, then, a supplier sells its products through multiple, but not all, possible retailers. Hence, you want to make sure that the consumer will want to search for your product. This is used by manufacturers that want to eliminate what we call marginal intermediates. They want to make sure that their product is sold only by big retailers who can actually promote their brand and position it at the right place. And then exclusive distribution is when a supplier agrees to sell its product only to a single wholesaler, intermediary, and/or retailer in a given market. And as we mentioned, this is only done when we have specialty goods. From a producer's viewpoint, exclusive distribution is good because it provides control over the last intermediate level before the final customer. Why? Because that retailers know that if the company is not happy, they can very easily make another exclusive agreement with another retailer. The intermediary provides more aggressive support and more promotion. The producer becomes more dependent upon the intermediary. From the intermediary viewpoint, it is worth for them to do exclusive distribution. Why? Because they're the sole benefactor of that area of the marketing activity. So they know that if someone wants that specific brand, they are the only place where they can get it. The intermediary may become too dependent, though, upon the producer, meaning that maybe most of their profit comes from one or two specific brands. And if that brand suffers, the retail store might suffer as well.